Good morning, world.
Good morning.
Hey, so did you check out that fight with Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. last weekend?
I did. Sponsored by Metamucil and AARP. It's a great fight. Great fight.
Yeah, I think Roy said at the end that his insides felt like liquid. Tyson was excited, wanted to do it again. You could see Roy reminded me of Roberto Duran, no mas.
Yeah, well, Tyson was flying high. That's a benefit of doing a little puff give before the fight.
That's right. He likes to do that. So I noticed something. You notice he's got a big tattoo on his face, but that takes away from a tattoo he had on his arm and on his side, and I thought that was real interesting.
We should talk about that. I know the one on his face, but I don't know too much about the other ones. So I think we should talk about today on Cedric and Brian. I'm Cedric.
And I'm Brian, and this is Cedric and Brian. All right, before we get into his tattoos, if you haven't checked it out, check out our last video. We did a parody on mask wearing, and if you haven't watched it, it's a little different than our normal format.
Right.
But I thought it was funny.
Yeah, the whole focus on better safe than sorry, and that if you have the mask on, it will cure all ills.
It'll protect you from everything.
Yep.
So anyways, go watch that right now. Turn this off. Go watch that and then come back and watch this.
Indeed.
All right, so Cedric, I wanted to talk about the two, because I didn't know this about Mike Tyson. Because when you see that big tattoo on his face, I guess tribal tattoo,
Right.
kind of takes away from anything else because it's unusual for somebody to have a tattoo on their face. But then I noticed, I was squinting at the TV and I said, I think that's Mao Zedong and Che Guevara that he's got tattooed. And I'm like, why in the heck does Mike Tyson have two communists on? I mean, I guess because they're warriors, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I'm going to go on a limb and think Mike Tyson probably doesn't know the real reason why he has those on. But maybe we should talk about that and help him out a little bit.
I think he probably just, some woke person probably gave him the short university version of those two.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably thought they're really good people. You don't see Mao everywhere, but you do see Che Guevara.
Yes.
Especially with Antifa, you seem to see it flying everywhere.
Yes.
And then I just found out when my son goes to school at UC San Diego, a school of higher learning, they have something called the Che Cafe.
Che Guevara. Che Cafe.
Yep, Che
Model
Cafe.
after Che Guevara.
Yep, and it's basically a safe space and where people can go exchange ideas, except for, I saw an interview, if your idea has anything to do with Trump, it's not allowed.
Yes, it has to be the right ideas.
Yeah, so, that's so disheartening. I mean, I spend my hard-earned money that I make during capitalism to send my kids to school, to have them now have a Che Cafe who railed against capitalism.
Right.
So we did some research on Che, and other than him being a symbol everywhere with the fighting the man, we thought we'd dig in and let you know a little bit about the man behind the beret.
Right. And why it's important for us to do this, like Brian was talking about the cafe on the campus of UC San Diego.
Yeah.
A lot of the students don't even know what the man stood for,
Yeah.
or what he was about. And I have to admit, I was kind of like that when I was in high school and college. Some things were just cool. And I wore my little Malcolm X thing and did the Power Fist thing, but I really had no idea what it was all about until I took the time to investigate it and figure it out for myself.
And then NWA, right? Was that your
NWA,
band?
yes, yeah. But you're talking about some of the things that the cafe stood for. You said it was a safe place. They talked about radical ideologies.
Yeah.
They really promoted unity, safe space, and
But what's funny is they call it a counterculture. So a lot of these things, when they talk about Che Guevara, it's counterculture ideologies. But when you go on a college campus now, that's not the counterculture. Unfortunately, they're teaching that as culture and the way
culture.
Things should be.
Right.
And for those of you who, I know if you're watching this channel, you're probably not a communist. So Mao and Che Guevara, and I know people like AOC like to throw the term socialist out there, but they were communists. In fact, Che Guevara, one of his claims to fame is to get Cuba after the overthrow, which he helped Castro. So for those of you who don't know, Che Guevara was born in Argentina to a upper middle class family.
yes, yes.
He was not poor. He traveled through South America,
Right.
and then saw the poor and decided that communism would be better.
And you can relate to this because he actually started out in medicine.
Yeah. So he went back because he wanted to help the poor. So like a lot of socialists, he had good intentions initially.
Right.
So he thought that he misunderstood. He thought that capitalism was the reason for all of the poor in South America.
Right.
Well, South America is still poor, whether it's been under capitalism, communism, socialism, but mainly it's because it's been run by tyrants.
Right.
It's not run as a true capitalist system. It's run as a corrupt capitalist system. If you use the term capitalist and to mean just you sell something and you buy something. Somebody
Right.
needs something. But when it's corrupt, what happens is it's not a free market.
Exactly.
So in the United States, it's a free market system for the most part. I know you're going to say, hey, well, it's not all free, which it's not. But it's the closest, it's the best system there is.
Right.
But in South America at the time, it's not free. If you go to these countries, they're still battling these tyrants and these dictators. So it's not a true free capitalistic system.
Right.
So anyways, Che Guevara, seeing that, met Castro in the late 50s, or the mid to late 50s.
Mid-50s.
In Mexico City, I believe.
Yep.
And decided to help Castro overthrow Batista in Cuba.
And during his travels, he became an expert, along with his ideologies on capitalism and socialism. He became an expert at guerrilla warfare.
Yeah.
He learned that from different stops along the way.
Yes. So he went in. But here's some of the things that these, and we thought interesting, these kids at these universities, I don't know what they're really teaching at these universities, but these safe spaces and ideas, counterculture ideas, revolution, all that. They said, would you be able to speak about Trump here? No. We don't want to talk to somebody who's a racist, misogynist, homophobe, all those things. Mm-hmm. Well, what they didn't know that Che Guevara was he put the gays in Cuba in forced work camps.
Yes.
And in some cases imprisoned them and executed them.
Executed them simply because they were gay.
They thought of homosexuality as a handicap. They imprisoned them, they made them work, or they killed them.
Right.
So for those of you at Che Cafe, the man that they martyred here, because he was executed in Bolivia when he tried to take his same tactics to overthrow the country of Bolivia, they finally caught him, they executed him.
Right. That was in 67.
Yeah, 1967. Yeah. Like most martyrs, their legend becomes greater than the man. So he was pretty much a failed leader other than when he helped in Cuba with Castro.
Right.
But again, you're talking about a small island.
Right.
But then he tried to conquer these bigger countries, pretty much failed at every turn, died a martyr, and now you see his face adorned on every socialist, every Black Lives Matter, every Antifa. He's one of the... And here's the interesting thing. Tell him about, they use him in Black Lives Matter, but how did he treat black people?
Oh, well, black people, he was viewed as just people who were supposed to work, and they were downtrodden, and from what he said, they really didn't bathe regularly. They were just used for work and for entertainment, primarily. And he viewed them as people who just didn't know how to save money, and they lived for fun and frivolity, and he didn't have a very good image about black people back then.
Yeah. So along with homosexuals, he wasn't too favorable with homosexuals and the Africans of the time in those countries. And it's funny because Bautista was a mulatto. He was half black, and that's the guy that they overthrew with these two very European white guys. Guevara, who was from Argentina, pretty white, dark hair. So you're talking Spanish influence, white, European.
It's a small thing. Most mulattoes, even in other cultures, this as well, they're usually hated more than pure black. Either you're white or you're black. Yeah. If you're mixed with something, then the hatred for you becomes even intensified more than that.
And then you're usually hated by both sides. But then I looked up, I said, so all the stuff that we discovered and we learned about Che Guevara, why did Mike Tyson put him on his, I think it's right here on his...
Right.
And what he said is he admired him for standing up for the little guy and the working class man. Well, when Che Guevara first moved to Cuba, he picked the biggest mansion in
on the block.
So, and that is what you see over and over and over with these revolutionaries that want to start communism. Guess what? They become very rich because what happened in Venezuela, fighting for the man, fighting for that evil capitalism. Now look at that country. Mm-hmm. But the leaders of that party live in all the mansions, fly the private jets, So they become the thing that the left hates.
Are you thinking George Soros and Bernie Sanders, boys and girls?
Exactly. Bernie with his 3 mansions.
Jeez.
But he's fighting for
We're
you.
fighting for the little man.
So anyways, that was one. So he's got Che Guevara. And then the other one he has, and I can't remember what arm right now, but on the other arm, I'm trying to think of the fight. I think it's on his right arm, is Mao Zedong.
Yes.
So, and for those of you who don't know who Mao was, he was the communist leader of China. And we're going to get into his history, but he didn't really say why he put that on there. But the interesting thing is, and this might make sense later, is when he got that tattoo, correct?
Yes, he got that tattoo when he was sent to prison for rape.
So it kind of makes more sense that, again, I think in Mike Tyson's brain, he thinks of these people as warriors,
right,
not as war criminals, which they actually are. They were brutal murderers, if you want to call them murderers, killers at the very least. Che Guevara, I didn't bring it up, but he would have firing squads, and he even said, I wasn't sure about the innocence or guilt, but you got to do what you got to do, basically,
right,
during a revolution. So he just would kill innocent people and didn't care.
And we're talking about Mike Tyson because of the fight that happened last week. But let's be clear, someone like Mike Tyson, you wouldn't go to him for advice. He's not the most emotionally well person to begin with. So the reasons why he does something to his body, it could be for any reason whatsoever. He wasn't very strong. We all know what happened to him. He took that pitfall after his trainer died, who he was very close to. I don't want to get into the whole Robin Givens thing. That messed him up. So we're dealing with a man who's not mentally well, so I can kind of see why he did some things that just seem a little silly.
All right, well, let's get into Mao. So he was the leader of China in what years?
Mao. He was chair of the Communist Party from 1943 to 1976.
Okay, so a long time. And so what people don't know, so obviously Tyson has that tattoo. You'll see the hammer and sickle, which is a Soviet thing. So it's also part of Red China.
Yes.
So Mao was a fan when it was a nationalist government there. He was a fan when the Soviet Union started to come up. And so he became a communist, and he became part of the Communist Party.
Right.
And they eventually overthrew the Nationalist Party. So I have a question for you. What would you feel about Mike Tyson if he had Hitler tattooed on him? Okay. What do you think people would think of? Do you think that would be tolerated?
No, not at all.
So Hitler killed 6 million people.
Yes.
So it's one of the great atrocities. We know all about it, because it wasn't that long ago. It was in the during World War II. Mm-hmm. But during that same time, and which went on longer, Mao was attributed with the killing of anywhere from 40 to 80 million people.
Yeah, 6 million versus 40 to 80 million people.
Yet it's okay to have a tattoo.
Right.
So the Nazis put people in concentration camps, as we know. He starved them. He gassed them. Mao did, within 4 years, I think you had the dates, what was it, between 1958 and 1962 alone?
Yeah.
Forced labor camps, starvation,
persecution,
execution, and then the Great Famine.
Right.
So it was known that during the famine, where if children were looking for food, Mao's guards would take those kids, instead of feeding them, they would put them out in the cold at the end of mountains, leave them there so they would die of the weather, basically.
Yeah, starvation.
But
I guess the way they justified is that, like, if you and I were part of different families, I would eat your children and you would eat my children. So it kind of justified because you weren't eating your own child.
Yeah, it was known where another thing that people would do is when their family members would die, they would hide them so they could still get those rations of food that the government would dole out.
Right.
So again, the other thing, and this is one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up, because if you're a conservative and you want to go speak, free speech, university campus, sometimes you either just can't, or you have to hire so much security
right.
that it's not feasible.
Right.
So that's free speech. Mao, one of his big things was to not allow people to have free speech and he would even say to read too much could be dangerous.
And he stopped the production of newspapers or reading the printed paper.
So you could not have another opinion, and we're seeing that here. Is it going to ever get that bad? I don't think so. I think there's enough people on one side that won't allow that, but the fact that it's being pushed here is scary. And in a country, of course, they thought Mao was this great person at the beginning. He was getting rid of the totalitarianism type governments, so he says. He was going to bring out, he raised education, he raised well, this is the funny thing is, they said he raised the life expectancy, but if you take all of those kids and people that were killed, 40 to 80 million, I think if you take those into account, it didn't go up. But of course, historians just say, oh yeah, but the average person who didn't get murdered or starved to death, they lived longer. They had better education. Women's rights was huge. He took and he elevated women's rights in China.
Sounds very similar to what's going on now.
Yeah, so at the beginning, it seems like, oh, this guy's doing a good job. But in the background, any dissident, anybody who didn't quite agree with him was killed. The famine killed many. The government did not help. So when you rely on government to help and raise you up, if the government decides, it's not worth it, then now you have no recourse because now you've gotten rid of your system to run your own lives.
Yeah. Well, what Mao did, it's very similar to what's going on nowadays. The reason that things like socialism and Marxism isn't looked down that much because they use a lot of euphemisms. Like Brian was just saying, it's put in such a nice way, like educating and bringing women up and things like that. And it's not as hard in your face as the concentration camps and being a Nazi were.
You see these two figures that were known to execute innocent people or let them die. Yet if you saw Hitler on his tattoo, there would no way would that be acceptable.
Right. And I'm sure our audience knows this. Brian talked about the hammer and the sickle, and then the fist that's embodied in the fist right there. That's also the symbol for BLM. They use the exact same symbol.
Yep. And those are they use it because it's sort of kind of a counter-revolution type of thing, but that's the thing. It's not anymore. If you look through this pandemic that we've been going through, and if the Black Lives Matter with the George Floyd, they think that they're the counter-revolutionaries. Yet every politician on the left and every media station, almost every media station out there, is a supporter of this. So how could it be counter-revolutionary when everybody supports it?
Right.
So it's kind of silly. Now, shows like us, we're counter-revolutionary because we're getting taken off of social media. Right. We're getting censored. We're getting fact-checked. And I know I'm kind of going off subject, but, why do we allow and not question somebody who's this cult hero of the day, and now he's fighting again at 54, and, you go Tyson. Yet he has these people that in their own ways were just as bad as Hitler, and in Mao's case, many more people died.
Yeah.
Now, he killed his own people. Maybe that's why people don't care, because it's like, oh, it happened over in China, whereas Hitler went into other countries and grabbed Jews from other countries and killed them.
Yeah, that's another similarity is that, he killed his own people. And like Brian said, the Nazis, they killed a lot of Jews. And that's why, and like I said, not to get off track, that's why a lot of people don't really bat an eye at the whole, blacks kill more blacks. Mm-hmm. When you kill your own, it doesn't draw as much ire as you do if you kill someone who's outside of your race or your ethnicity.
So Mao killed his own people. Maybe that's the reason why he's not vilified as much as Hitler, is because he just killed a bunch of Chinese.
Yeah, and like you said, what was the number? 48 to 60 million? Or
40 to 80 million
40 to 80
people.
million.
So they don't know because obviously, like this pandemic, of course, China still only has 83,000 confirmed cases for the last 9 months.
Right.
So you can't get proper numbers out of China even today. So, but historians that look at it, they just say it's somewhere between 40 and 80. So even if it was only 40, that's many more times than the Nazis.
The 6 million that killed by Hitler and the Nazis.
Yet it's okay now for one of our cult heroes, Mike Tyson, to have his tattoo on his arm. So
that's definitely a damn shame.
So anyway, we thought again, if this one's too heavy, Go back and watch our last video. If you,
I mean, a lot of people like comment that we bring levity and a little lighthearted, but some things are heavy. We understand it. We're trying to lighten things up a little bit, but at the same time, like we said in the very beginning, it has to be an educational channel, and we appreciate a lot of you who share your own story, your own personal stories, and coming up with what you know. So we do appreciate that.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think about Tyson having Che Guevara here? You know, was he a revolutionary? Was he, fighting for the little guy? Or was he just another politician? He was a bad politician from what I heard, but another revolutionary who got a little bit too cult of personality, got a little too, sure of himself, and ended up killing innocent people. And then you've got Mao, who we know at the low end, 40 million people died under his regime, up to maybe 80 million people, and in horrible ways. In fact, we didn't bring this up, but they said they would take children and burn them to death,
right.
Starve them to death,
right.
Throw them. Oh, they tie their hands and throw them in rivers.
They were buried alive.
And they told parents to bury their children alive.
Yeah.
So again, and he's tattooed, and it's no problem, especially for people on the left. It's no problem.
Yeah.
Mao was a good guy. He helped women's rights.
Right.
So anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a little heavy topic.
Yeah. So I know you started thinking, oh, we're going to talk about Mike Tyson. Well, that was my take on it.
Yes. Mike, if you're watching, it was Brian's idea. So that's going to be Mike Tyson's new fight. The new YouTuber is going to fight Brian.
As long as it's in virtual reality, that's how I fight.
You're undefeated in virtual reality.
I am undefeated. And I haven't bled once.
Oh, dude. Well, you guys enjoyed it. Like you guys always do, you're doing a great job. Leave your comments in the comment section. And hope you guys are doing great out there. Make sure you like. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you ring that bell. And share this video with everyone you know. Until next time, I'm Cedric.
And I'm Brian. We'll see you later.